Anne Rice is the author of 16 books, including Interview with a Vampire. Her hugely popular tales explore the tantalizing and erotic world of the supernatural. She's just written the 5th book in her series, The Vampire Chronicles. In Memnoch the Devil, the dashingly cruel vampire Lestat returns, but surrenders the spotlight to Memnoch, the fallen angel. I'm very pleased to have Anne Rice back at this table. Welcome.
It's a
great
joy.
to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. How is New Orleans?
Oh, New Orleans is great right now. Very hot and very beautiful.
Yeah. Let me talk about this a little bit because
Sure.
you have to go to, I want to get a lot of stuff in. You say that this was a very, very hard book for you to write.
It was an agony. Yeah.
Why?
Well, you know, a mystical experience is something that usually comes to you. But writing a book like this is sort of like courting a mystical experience, you know. I really was trying to get into, I wouldn't want to say the mind of God, that's disrespectful, but I was trying to understand how there can be evil and suffering in the world, how that can happen. I was trying to see the point of view of the devil, see the point of view of God, see the point of view of man in relation to that. And so I was going as far as I could toward having a revelation as one can go. The revelation didn't, comes from outside. That's something else. But I put myself through it. It was like going on a retreat for a month and then emerging.
Now, how do you do that? I mean, how do you go on this retreat and emerge? How do you make these explorations to sort of decide what it is that's tantalizing and what it is that you want to put into your story?
Well, I think about it for a long time. I've wanted to do this novel for a long time, and I tried to make this novel work with just a mortal man going to heaven and hell with Memnoch and so forth. It didn't work, but as soon as I put Lestat in the novel, it worked perfectly.
Lestat, he also is the narrator.
Yes, he's the narrator.
You know, why not have someone else narrate it? Why have
him?
Well,
Lestat's narrated The Tale of the Body Thief and pretty much most of the books, the Vampire Chronicles. He's the narrator.
Is this the end of the Vampire
Chronicles? I think it is. When I wrote this last year in 94, and then this year I went back over the proofs a year later, which is a strange experience, not to see a book for a year and then suddenly to read it. And when I finished, I was really, really high about the whole thing. And he walked off, I swear. He just said, "This is all I have to tell you. Yeah. You've done enough with me." And he walked
speaks to
off.
you?
Oh, yeah, sort of, right.
I mean, he's like a friend. He's like what?
Well, he's not like a friend. He's like the bad part of me.
He's the bad part of you.
I think so, or the part of me that resolves things instead of just worrying about them. Yeah. Takes action no matter what.
Are his journeys some sense of an exploration? You're talking about putting your mind into God, trying to determine the difference in good and evil, and Satan and God and fallen angels and all of that. Is it an effort for you to undergo, when you write these, some personal exploration of these questions?
Oh, absolutely. I was obsessed. I had been reading the Bible, I've been reading Scripture, I've been reading the apocryphal texts, the ones that were kicked out, the canonical version. Yeah. I've been reading and reading and reading, and I'm fascinated by this story of the idea of this fallen angel. And I wanted to get into it and explore it. In the novel, I wanted to put Lestat right there. I say, why? I've always been bothered by the fact that that an angel would be so stupid as to fall, like Satan did, and then that he wouldn't change over all the centuries, that he wouldn't learn anything. So that's, I took the concept that he was, in fact, a learning and thinking being, as well, a great angel, as well as the devil. And so I tried to, I guess I took everything I'd always been taught about all of them, and I really went into, exploring it fictionally. I mean, it was very, very, very much a journey to hell for me. I mean, they go to hell. Well, yeah, they go to hell in the book, and I
they
went
go to heaven
with them.
too. I mean, they go back and forth.
Yes, that was wonderful. That's why I did that first, But it really tore me up. But in a sense, this is what I care about. I don't care about anything else except these questions. I really don't.
Like, who is God and what is God, and what's
why
good
does
and what's evil,
exactly. What is
and immortality. There seems to be some giant search on your part to find immortality.
Well, you know what it is. It's not so much literal immortality. I mean, the vampires have always been symbols. It's me seeking after the surety of immortality that I had when I was a Catholic child. And I keep reading. The
certainty of it.
Yeah, I keep reading, right. I keep reading these near-death experiences. They come out every week. We have a new book of people who have seen the light. But these are fascinating stories.
Even Harvard professors now.
Yes, I mean, but these are fascinating stories by these people of what they've seen. And I'm intrigued. I think atheism is kind of cocky. It seems shallow to me now. It seems brittle.
Yeah,
like
but in the end, as soon
through.
as you say that, in the end here, there is no certainty.
Well,
in the end, there's no answer.
Yeah, we're always left with that doubt.
Yeah, why? I mean, why couldn't you come to some conclusion here?
Oh, no, I couldn't.
Why? Because you don't know? Or
no, because I don't think God and the devil ever let us come to a conclusion.
Yeah, it is an eternal battle between the two of them.
After another, yeah. I mean, you know, it can be read too many ways. I mean, goodness, I mean, God, I was going through the... you know, the books of the Torah. I mean, the incredible violence, the strange things that are said in Isaiah. I'm just enthralled with all that. And I'm also enthralled, as everybody else is, with, you know, what we do with evil in the world. Like, we have been ashamed for, you know, since the Second World War, that we did not do something to stop the extermination of the Jews in Germany. And yet now we are watching the extermination of peoples in several different countries. And every time our president really tries to do something about it, Americans jump up and say, well, we don't want...
Don't send American men and women.
We didn't put them in the army to fight, you know. Yeah. And I mean, I understand that. I really do. But I can't help but believe that we should have some sort of foreign legion for volunteer, you know, people who do want to go save people from starving.
Well, interesting you say that. In fact, there's a proposal at the UN. In fact, some people at the UN would like to see the UN have a standing army of a kind that would go, sort of a rapid deployment force. It would be able to go from region to region, country to country, where there is an emergency of a kind of genocide taking place.
That is exactly it. We're watching genocide. We know it's happening in Iraq with the Kurds, and we know it's happening in different countries.
Bosnia, and it's happening.
Yeah, and it's happening in Africa.
It has happened in Cambodia, and it's happened in Africa.
Right, and all this troubles me very much. So this is my way of writing about it. I mean, that's always been the trick with me, you know, if it's a trick, is that I can take supernatural characters, like the vampires, and write about the things I really care about with them.
But why couldn't you do it with human characters?
Oh, I just don't feel any desire to. I tried this book with a human hero. There was too much the human hero would have to overcome the initial shock of seeing God and the devil. So I needed an experienced spiritual wanderer like Lestat, who already had almost the powers of an angel. And it said the book just worked. It was as if he was right at my shoulder, and he said, "I told you I was the person to put in this book." You know.
Do you see Tom Cruise now in your mind's eye when you think of Lestat?
No, I see my Lestat, but I loved Tom Cruise's performance. Yeah, I really did, and I think he was absolutely wonderful in the movie. More wonderful, perhaps, the more you watch the movie, the more wonderful his performance becomes.
Yeah. How did the movie do?
The movie did spectacularly
David
well.
Geffen came away very...
Oh, yeah, it made
richer.
$200 million or something. Warner Brothers was absolutely floored. I mean, nobody expected an R-rated movie to make millions and millions and millions. I think David gave all his money to AIDS.
From this film?
Yeah, from that film.
Are you, in Memnoch the Devil, the Vampire Chronicles, are you, in a sense, does your audience, are they allow you to have a vampire suck the blood of Jesus?
Well, I'll tell you, last night I signed at Barnes & Noble from 5:30 to 11:30, and many, many, many people had read the book, and not a single one seemed in any way shocked. They saw it as a solid final adventure for Lestat, and they understood it in the way that I meant it, which is...
And how did you mean it?
With moral seriousness, with respect. You know, I mean, I was a little girl...
The body of Christ?
Absolutely. I was a little girl who sat in church on Good Friday and meditated on the wounds. Right. And I put Lestat in the company of God incarnate, as he calls him throughout. And that seemed to me to be absolutely inevitable, that would happen, that Christ would invite him to drink the blood. I mean, I grew up going to Mass every morning to drink that blood in a different form, but we believed absolutely that it was the blood of Christ. So, you know, this is very serious to me. I don't make fun of religion. I'm not flippant. This is not satirical.
But did you leave the Catholic Church?
Yes, I left at 18.
Yeah, at 18, and you have not been back?
No,
no. Might you ever? I mean, is all of this going to somehow cause you to have some kind of religious experience of your own so that you'll become closer to a church?
I don't think so, but I am obsessed with the idea of goodness and kindness and how we live, how we make an ethical world today. I'm obsessed with this, and the latest book I've done is about the same thing.
What's it about?
It's called Servant of the Bones, and it's about an ancient Hebrew ghost who was made to do evil and just refuses.
What do you think the success of your books is about? I mean, I know that you have spoken to the notion of the critical success of them and how you feel about what critics say, and we'll get to that in a moment. But obviously America many, many people love what you say. I mean, is it because you are somehow a way for them to deal with these themes that are interesting in terms of sexuality and immortality and death and all of that?
That's what they indicate to me. That's what they tell me. They tell me that the books sweep them off their feet, that that's what they want, that the books really matter to them. I don't. Sometimes I'm baffled because it was such a weird path to take for an author. I was so stubborn. I was so, you know, as David Geffen says, now don't be stubborn, Anne, you know, when we're talking about a new script. But I mean,
A new script for...
Oh, I did a script for The Witching Hour and sent it to him. Do you know anyone who would like to direct and produce it? It's at Warner Brothers. It's been sitting there for weeks. Okay, call him up.
I think you just got the message out.
Yeah, right. But,
by the way, Warner Brothers, Anne Rice is not quite happy with the fact that you haven't figured out what to do with her script.
Well, after saying for years that I would never break bread with them again or be in the same room with them, then David persuaded my buddy, persuaded me from the heart to do The Witching Hour and
now, how does he do this?
He calls
power
and
persuasion
charming
that he
voice and says, "Han, I want you to write the script for The Witching Hour." And I said, "You're kidding me."
Never,
you
David.
are asking me. No, that's right. He said, "Oh, come on, you know, you really should do it." Blah blah blah.
Yeah, and you did it.
Yeah, after about 10 calls. Yeah, I finally did.
Now, do you control all of these? You can determine. I mean, is this going to be made into a film? It's a little bit hard for this.
He controls that because Lestat is in that, and he controls all the novels that involve Lestat. That was contractually.
He owns Lestat. David Geffen owns Lestat.
He'd have to, he'd have to pay money, but he could automatically acquire it.
Well, did he pay you well?
I think he. That's a tough question. Yeah, I was happy enough with the deal on The Witching Hour and Lasher. On Interview with the Vampire, that I regarded as really a gift to him. He feels it was a horribly expensive price. I feel to give him the control of all these books for that amount was really a gift.
But there's no doubt that this is the end of the Vampire Chronicles for you.
For me, it is, yeah, because it's it's all a spiritual quest. From the first opening line, I see, said the vampire, you know.
Right.
And to me, it all came together with this. Was the final, Lestat tried everything, and finally God and the devil, came down and sort of called his bluff.
Tell me about Memnoch. I mean, how you see Memnoch.
Well, I'm very intrigued with how the devil could fall, all the myths about it. Yeah. And, one of the myths, and this really is not, I don't think, in Scripture, this is a myth, is that Lucifer foresaw the incarnation of Christ and said, "I refuse to bow down to a creature who is lesser than me." Well, I always thought that was rather dumb, really stupid, And I wanted to try to see what the devil's true position could be in opposition to God. And I developed an adversary to God, but an adversary who cares
part
passionately.
Part of this book is making the argument against God, God's moral failings. Yes?
The God we're taught. Exactly. The God we're taught about. The God who supposedly, says everything is okay if we,
It's an indictment of God.
It's an indictment of a concept of God. It's not an indictment of the concept of God that these people are seeing who have near-death experiences. It's not at all an indictment of that concept of God.
Well, that
but
God
it is an indictment.
That's just a nice little tunnel with a bright light.
Oh, but listen, more and more people are seeing this and experiencing this life review and this.
And you believe in it, that in fact people with near-death experiences?
I'm very intrigued by it. I collect everything, from the most simply written baby talk book to the most scholarly study of recently there was one by a Yale student, a Yale professor, called The Case for Heaven, and it's a very intelligently written book. But what fascinates me is first-person accounts of all these different people.
This is clearly going to be a book for you. Near-death experiences. Somehow all of this is going to go into your brain.
They're in there already. I mean, a lot of it, The version of heaven in there comes from many, many different sources and descriptions of heaven. Yeah. But it was, in a way, it was like saying, okay, let's take everything I was taught, and suppose it's true. Well, what do they really say to each other? How do the arguments start? Who's right, who's wrong? How does somebody
This could be a great debate for television. Just take two. You don't need the whole book. I mean, you could read the book, but you could do a great debate about the nature of God between the devil and God, in a sense taking, almost pro and con.
Wasn't there a play in the late 50s, J.B. by Archibald MacLeish?
Yeah, there was, in fact, exactly.
I remember seeing that play in
Pulitzer Prize winner. both prose and poetry.
And I remember seeing that. I was very, very young. I barely remember the contents. I'd like to go back
What
and
would
see
be
it.
the hardest thing for you to do now? I mean, what is a terribly difficult road for Anne Rice to cross at this stage in her life and her career and her success?
I don't know.
Do you fear any? What do you fear? Because
that's an interesting question. I'm not sure. What I fear?
Yeah.
My own talent vanishing from me, getting away from me, my own intensity, you know, my own mind crumbling.
But you haven't seen any diminution of it, have you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm getting older. I'm 53.
Well,
you know, I mean, I wrote Interview with a Vampire in 5 weeks, and, you know, now I wrote this in a month. I take about a month to write a book. But I worry. I see the signs of age. I see the memory. I'm also very intensely involved in what I'm writing now. There's no fun in this in a way. You know what I mean? It's thrilling, but there's no fun in going to hell and heaven and seeing
But why is it no fun? I mean, here you sit there and you create characters and you explore your own intellectual and emotional curiosity. Why is that not fun? I mean,
it's better than fun. It's thrilling. I suppose it would be like, you know, asking what's my favorite guy, George Foreman, after a fight. Was that fun?
Why is George Foreman your favorite guy?
Oh, because he's phenomenal. Nobody can beat George. I mean, have you watched him just do one guy after another, and they're always coming on and saying, "Oh, poor old George, he should retire."
Poor old George.
The other guy is just...
You know, the problem with poor old George now is he wants Mike Tyson to give him the big battle, and it's not going to happen.
I know.
He's not going to get that $100 million gate from Mike Tyson.
Right, and it should happen.
Have you met George Foreman?
No.
This is a great conversation with George Foreman sitting here and Anne Rice sitting here.
I love George Foreman.
Tell me about God and tell me about the devil, George.
Right. But, to get back to what we were saying, I mean, what he does is tough, but he has to do it, right? There's an enormous drive there to pit himself
he said it is not easy to get up in the morning at 4 o'clock and know that you got to hit the road, and especially if you're whatever he is, 48, 49.
Yeah.
To do it then.
And some 28-year-old guy is going to come at him. And I love the way he wears them down, man. They're dead. You know, they're just out of there by the 5th round or something. Or he's holding them up after that. But it's thrilling. It's exciting. It's intense. I don't have any room in my life anymore for anything that isn't, you know.
Intense, exciting. And that's one of the things.
Yeah, my life is too serious right now. But it is. I mean, I have a lot of fun. You know, I just had a jazz funeral in New Orleans for my first signing. I got in a coffin, rode in a glass hearse with a jazz band from the Lafayette Cemetery.
Why did you do that?
I wanted to. I just wanted to do it, you know. I mean, over the years, I've been asked to do 1,000 things
Whatever
I didn't want to do.
Anne gets.
Well, I just decided that I would do what I wanted to do, you know.
How about sexuality?
What about it,
well,
Charlie?
I mean, we've talked about this before, but I mean, in a sense, in exploring all these kinds of things, I mean, also, everything that you do is ripe with eroticism and sexual...
Yeah. Well, I do see the world that way. I do see the world that way, very, very much.
In terms of lust and passion and sexuality.
Well, love, to me, these are all connected by love. I still can't understand how people can think an act of two people touching each other is a crime. Like when Hugh Grant got busted in Los Angeles, I thought, is this a joke? I mean, does this mean there's nobody died tonight in L.A.? No, there was no murder. There was no robbery. Peace on earth. Is this the beginning of a new era? I mean, you know, they go bust this guy in a car because he's with another consenting adult. Come on, I can't get that through my head. So sex and love are intimately connected for me. And as I mentioned to you before,
I don't think this had anything to do with love.
Well,
I think this was sex and business.
Well, at least it was sex and privacy. He needed to be touched. He needed to be in human contact. I don't know. I don't know.
He certainly had the urge, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we can assume.
And paid the price.
Oh, gosh. Well, thank God he's triumphed over all the small
therefore,
minds.
do you think that prostitution should be decriminalized and...
I don't know what to do about prostitution because so much of it involves exploitation of people and putting them on drugs and almost enslaving them. I do have fantasies of going around in a black limousine and killing every visible pimp I can find. You know, inviting them into the limo, spreading the whole thing with plastic so they don't bleed and then shooting them. Anybody who's been brutal to women and made them prostitutes and hurt them and killed them. I have many fantasies of doing that, but I will never do it. I don't think. Not unless I want to become a prison writer. You know? But I mean, that's how angry it makes me to think of what's done to women in prostitution. But I don't know. I don't know how I got this angry about all these things. I saw a complete harmony to life and felt a sort of ecstasy a year ago, and then just a passionate concern with all these things. Really.
Any other fantasies we ought to know about?
Oh, no, no. That I will never do. I mean, I can't imagine, but
Anybody else you want to shoot?
Anybody else I want to shoot? No, but cruelty and genocide make me furious. I mean, absolute unspeakable cruelty. And I think that they should make us angry. I think we're all developing a better sense of what kindness is and what love is, thanks to television. I mean, to tell you the truth, absolutely. You know, when we see horrors on TV now, and we can't forget them. And CNN isn't going to let us forget them, no matter what happens. And that's good. That's very, very good. It was not that way during the Second World War.
Yeah, and the only downside of that, the bad side of that, is the fact that in many cases there are unspeakable horrors going on that's not on camera, so therefore we're not motivated to do something about it.
And it tends to go in fads.
It tends to go where the cameras see it and bring it to the living room. That's where we tend to get exercise, and there are many places where we don't. Critical acclaim before we go. Is it, you think, that the supernatural is not considered serious business by literary critics? Apparently,
because it doesn't seem to be in any way connected with the actual effect of the books on the readers or the readership, or, you know.
And your response is what?
To ignore the reviews, pretty much. I mean, sometimes I learn something, but most of the time just sort of brush them aside. There's no indication of what the book is attempting or accomplishing. You know, I mean, very seldom is there. There is. That's not all the time. I mean, sometimes there is, but most of the time there's nothing of the sort. I think book reviewing in general is kind of like that now. I don't think too many authors would sit here and tell you they were overjoyed with book reviewing. Book reviewing is a mess. You know, it's not like opera reviewing, you know. I mean, the opera guy has to know something about opera. Yeah. You know, he can't just go in and say, "Why is everyone screaming in Italian? I don't like it." You know, but a book reviewer can do that to a book. Why are all these people vampires? Who is this nutcase? You know, and I think we're pretty all unhappy with it. I don't know.
Yeah. Writers are unhappy with critics.
Sure. Yeah.
Anne Rice, Memnoch the Devil, the Vampire Chronicles. She says this is probably the last in that series. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me back, Charlie. I loved it.
Thank you. We'll be right back. Stay with us.